Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Rick's fingers danced across the keyboard, his eyes fixed on the monitor as he edited the last batch of photos from today's shoot. The clock on his desk blinked 11:37 p.m., but time had lost all meaning hours ago. He rubbed his bleary eyes, trying to focus on the task at hand. A muffled thud from the bathroom startled him. He froze, listening intently. His apartment was on the 17th floor. No way it could be an intruder. Probably just the pipes settling, he reasoned, returning his attention to the screen. Then he heard it, a giggle. Distinctly feminine, but unlike any laugh he'd heard before. It was melodic, almost otherworldly. Rick's heart began to race. He wasn't alone. Grabbing the nearest object, a heavy lens cap, he crept towards the bathroom. The door was ajar, soft blue light spilling out into the hallway. Another giggle, followed by a hushed voice speaking in a language he couldn't comprehend. Rick took a deep breath, steeling himself. In one swift motion, he pushed the door open, brandishing his makeshift weapon. What he saw defied explanation. Two women stood in his bathtub, completely nude. But they weren't human. At least, not any humans he'd ever seen. Their skin was a deep, vibrant blue that seemed to glow from within. Their bodies were flawless, curves and proportions that would make any supermodel weep with envy. One of them, the taller one with flowing silver hair, was fiddling with the shower head, a look of fascination on her face. The other, slightly shorter with hair the color of starlight, was running her hands along the tiled wall, tracing the grout lines with delicate blue fingers. Rick's mouth went dry. He blinked hard, certain he must be hallucinating from overwork. But when he opened his eyes, they were still there, now staring at him with expressions of surprise and curiosity. "What? Who?" Rick stammered, the lens cap slipping from his grasp and clattering to the floor. The taller one smiled, revealing teeth that were just a shade too white, too perfect. "Greetings, Earth Dweller," she said, her voice carrying that same melodic quality he'd heard before. "I am Anita, and this is Layla. We come from the planet Aqua 9 seeking knowledge of your world." Rick's mind reeled. Aliens. In his bathroom. Naked, blue-skinned aliens that looked like they'd stepped out of a sci-fi pin-up calendar. He must be dreaming. Layla, the shorter one, ducked behind Anita, peering out with wide, iridescent eyes. "Anita," she whispered, loud enough for Rick to hear, "perhaps we should have researched their customs of dress before materializing." Anita waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. Observe how the humans' eyes dilate. Clearly our forms are pleasing to their species." She stepped out of the tub, moving with a grace that seemed to defy gravity. "Tell me, Earth Dweller, what is your designation?" Rick's brain finally kicked into gear. I'm Rick. Rick Chambers. And you can't just... You need to put some clothes on." He grabbed a towel from the rack, thrusting it towards Anita while averting his eyes. Anita took the towel, examining it with fascination. "Ah, I see. A fabric shield to conceal one's form. How quaint." She draped it over her shoulders like a cape, leaving the rest of her body exposed. "Is this correct?" Rick groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. "No, that's not... Look, just wrap it around you, okay? Both of you." He grabbed another towel, tossing it to Layla, who caught it with surprising dexterity. As the aliens fumbled with their makeshift garments, Rick's mind raced. This couldn't be real, yet every instinct told him it was. He was a photographer, trained to observe detail, and the details were undeniable. The way their skin seemed to shimmer, the subtle bioluminescence that pulsed beneath the surface. The slight webbing between their fingers, barely noticeable unless you looked closely. The way their eyes reflected light like a cat's, but with swirling patterns of color he'd never seen before. "Rick Chambers," Anita said, drawing his attention back to her face. She'd managed to wrap the towel around her torso, though it did little to diminish her otherworldly beauty. "We apologize for our abrupt arrival. Our research indicated this dwelling was unoccupied." "Yeah, well, your research was wrong," Rick said, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is my apartment. How did you even get in here?" Layla, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "We utilized our phase shift technology to bypass your primitive barriers." Her voice was softer than Anita's, with a lilting accent that made each word sound like a song. "It was not our intention to intrude upon your personal space." Rick ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what he was hearing. "Phase shift. Never mind. Why are you here? On Earth, I mean." Anita's eyes lit up, quite literally, glowing with an inner light. "We are explorers, Rick Chambers, seekers of knowledge. Your planet has long fascinated our people with its abundance of water and diverse ecosystem." "Water?" Rick echoed, confused. "Yes," Layla chimed in, her earlier shyness seemingly forgotten in her excitement. "On Aqua 9, water is a precious resource. We have heard tales of your world where it falls freely from the sky and fills vast basins." As if on cue, the shower head Anita had been examining earlier suddenly burst to life, sending a spray of water across the bathroom. Layla let out a yelp of surprise while Anita's eyes widened in wonder. "Fascinating," Anita exclaimed, reaching out to touch the stream. "Layla, observe. It's room temperature, yet it flows with such force." Rick lunged for the faucet, twisting it off. "Careful! You'll flood the place." He grabbed a hand towel, dabbing at the puddles forming on the floor. "Look, this is a lot to take in. I have about 1,000,000 questions, but first, we need to get you two some real clothes." Anita tilted her head, studying Rick intently. "You seem distressed, Rick Chambers. Are our forms not pleasing to you? Our preliminary research indicated that humans find symmetry and proportion aesthetically appealing." Rick felt his face flush. "That's not... I mean, you're both very... Look, it's complicated. Humans don't usually walk around naked, especially not around strangers. It's considered inappropriate." Layla's brow furrowed. "Inappropriate? But our bodies are natural. On Aqua 9, we celebrate the beauty of form in all its variations." "Yeah, well, this isn't Aqua 9, Rick muttered. He took a deep breath, trying to center himself. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. You two stay here. I'm going to find some clothes that might fit you. Then we'll talk. About everything. Deal." Anita and Layla exchanged a glance, seeming to communicate silently. After a moment, Anita nodded. "We accept your terms, Rick Chambers. We eagerly await the opportunity to learn more about your customs and culture." Rick nodded, backing out of the bathroom. He closed the door, leaning against it for a moment as the reality of the situation washed over him. Aliens. Real. Living aliens. In his bathroom. His life had just taken a turn into the Twilight Zone. As he rummaged through his closet looking for anything that might fit his unexpected guests, Rick's mind raced with possibilities. Should he call someone? The police? The government? But who would believe him? And more importantly, what would happen to Anita and Layla if he did? No, he decided. For now, at least, this would have to remain a secret. He'd talk to them, try to understand why they were here and what they wanted. And maybe, just maybe, he'd learn something extraordinary in the process. Rick grabbed a pair of sweatpants and two of his baggiest t-shirts. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. As he headed back to the bathroom, he steeled himself for what was sure to be the strangest conversation of his life. He knocked on the door. "Anita? Layla? I've got some clothes for you. Can I come in?" "Enter. Rick Chambers," Anita's voice called out. "We eagerly await your return." Rick took a deep breath and opened the door. The scene that greeted him was both comical and surreal. Anita and Layla had abandoned their towels and were examining various toiletries with intense curiosity. Anita was sniffing a bottle of aftershave, while Layla had somehow managed to tangle herself in a roll of toilet paper. "What is this scented liquid, Rick Chambers?" Anita asked, holding up the aftershave. "It smells of plants and chemicals. Is it a preservative for your skin?" Rick couldn't help but chuckle. "Not exactly. It's aftershave. You put it on after shaving your face. Well, men do anyway." Layla looked up from her toilet paper cocoon. "Shaving? You remove your facial hair? How curious. On Aqua 9, we celebrate all natural growth." "Yeah, well, Earthmen have different standards," Rick said, setting the clothes down on the counter. "Here, put these on. They'll be big on you, but it's better than nothing." As the alien struggled with the unfamiliar garments, Rick found himself studying them more closely. Despite their blue skin and otherworldly beauty, there was something undeniably human about their expressions, their movements. They were alien, yes, but not so different that he couldn't relate to them. Once they were dressed, Anita in the sweatpants and Layla in a t-shirt long enough to serve as a dress, Rick led them into the living room. They looked around with wide eyes, taking in every detail of the apartment. "Please, sit," Rick said, gesturing to the couch. Anita and Layla perched on the edge, their posture perfect, hands folded neatly in their laps. Rick took the armchair opposite them, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Okay," he said, taking a deep breath. "Let's start from the beginning. You're from Aqua 9. Where exactly is that?" Anita's eyes lit up. Literally, Rick noticed, a soft glow emanating from within. Aqua 9 orbits a binary star system approximately 47 of your light years from Earth. It is the 9th planet in our system, hence the designation. Rick nodded, trying to process this information. "And you came all that way, why exactly?" Layla spoke up, her voice soft but eager. "We are seekers of knowledge, Rick Chambers. Our people have long observed your world from afar, fascinated by its abundance of water and the diversity of life it supports. When the opportunity arose to study Earth up close, we volunteered." "But why my apartment?" Rick asked. "Of all the places on Earth, why here?" Anita and Layla exchanged a glance. "That was not intentional," Anita admitted. "Our phase shift technology allows us to transport to any location we can visualize. We had studied images of Earth dwellings and aimed for what we believed to be an unoccupied space." "We miscalculated," Layla added, looking sheepish. "We offer our sincere apologies for the intrusion." Rick ran a hand through his hair, still struggling to believe this was really happening. "Okay, so you're here to study Earth. What exactly do you want to know?" Anita leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Everything, Rick Chambers. Your customs, your technology, your social structures. But most of all, we wish to understand your relationship with water. On Aqua 9, it is our most precious resource. Yet here, you have vast oceans, rivers, and lakes. You even have water that falls from the sky." "Rain," Rick supplied. "We call it rain." "Rain," Layla repeated, savoring the word. "It sounds magical." Rick couldn't help but smile at their enthusiasm. Despite the surreal nature of the situation, he found himself warming to these strange, beautiful creatures. Their curiosity was infectious, their wonder at things he took for granted oddly refreshing. "Listen," he said, making a decision. "It's late, and this is a lot to process. Why don't you two stay here tonight? We can talk more in the morning, and I can show you around the city. Maybe answer some of your questions about Earth." Anita's face lit up with joy. "You would do this for us, Rick Chambers? Truly, your hospitality honors us." Layla nodded enthusiastically. We accept your generous offer with gratitude. Perhaps you could show us more about this shower device? It seems a fascinating way to interact with water. Rick felt a blush creeping up his neck. Uh, yeah, we can cover that tomorrow. For now, let's focus on getting you settled for the night. As he bustled about, setting up the couch for his unexpected guests, Rick's mind whirled with the implications of what was happening. He was harboring aliens. Beautiful, fascinating aliens who seemed to view Earth with the wonder of children discovering a new playground. Part of him knew he should be afraid, or at least more cautious. But there was something about Anita and Layla that put him at ease. Their openness, their genuine curiosity, it was disarming. As he bid them good night and retreated to his bedroom, Rick couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed irrevocably. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. It was going to be one hell of an adventure. Rick tossed and turned, sleep eluding him as his mind raced with the events of the evening. The soft murmur of alien voices drifted through his bedroom door, reminding him that this wasn't some bizarre dream. He glanced at his phone, 3:47 a.m. With a sigh, he swung his legs over the side of the bed. Maybe a glass of water would help. As he crept down the hallway, Rick froze. The bathroom door stood ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkened corridor. The sound of running water reached his ears, accompanied by hushed, melodic voices. "Anita? Layla?" he called out softly, approaching the door. "Everything okay in there?" The voices fell silent. Then Anita's lilting tones floated through the air. "Rick Chambers, we hope we didn't disturb your rest cycle. We were simply experimenting." Rick's hand hesitated on the doorknob. "Experimenting? With what?" "Your fascinating water distribution system," Layla chimed in, her voice bubbling with excitement. "It's quite ingenious, really, the way it emerges from multiple apertures at varying temperatures and pressures." Curiosity overrode caution. Rick pushed the door open, then immediately regretted his decision. Anita and Layla stood in his shower, completely naked, their blue skin glistening under the spray of water. Bottles of shampoo and body wash lay scattered around their feet, some tipped over and leaking their contents onto the tile. "Jesus Christ!" Rick exclaimed, averting his eyes and reaching for a towel. "What happened to the clothes I gave you?" Anita cocked her head, genuine confusion etched on her features. "We removed them, of course. They would have become saturated and heavy. Is this not the correct procedure?" Rick thrust the towel towards them, careful to keep his gaze fixed on a point just above their heads. "No, it's not. Look, on Earth, we usually shower alone, and we definitely don't use other people's showers without asking." Layla's eyes widened, a look of mortification spreading across her face. "Oh no, have we committed a grave social faux pas? We meant no disrespect, Rick Chambers. On Aqua 9, communal bathing is a cherished social activity." Despite his embarrassment, Rick felt a twinge of sympathy. They truly didn't understand. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. It's fine. Just, please, wrap yourselves in these towels and step out of the shower." As the aliens complied, Rick couldn't help but notice how the water seemed to cling to their skin, forming intricate swirling patterns before being absorbed. It was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. "Okay, now that you're covered, let's talk about boundaries. You can't just use people's things without asking. It's considered rude." Anita nodded solemnly. "We understand, Rick Chambers. We will endeavor to respect your cultural norms. But may we ask a question?" Rick braced himself. "Sure, go ahead." "Why do you have so many different cleansing solutions?" Anita gestured to the array of bottles. "We counted no less than 7 distinct varieties. Are Earth beings particularly difficult to clean? Despite himself, Rick chuckled. No, it's just marketing, I guess. Some are for hair, some for body, some smell different or claim to do special things. Layla's eyes lit up with curiosity. Fascinating. On Aqua 9, we use a single multi-purpose cleansing gel. The idea of scented bodily secretions is quite novel. Rick pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a headache coming on. Look, it's late, or early, depending on how you look at it. Why don't we all try to get some sleep, and we can discuss Earth bathing customs in the morning? The aliens exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. Then Anita spoke, her voice taking on a sultry tone that made Rick's pulse quicken. Sleep? But Rick Chambers, we've only just begun our exploration of Earth's aquatic pleasures. Surely you wouldn't deny us the opportunity to deepen our understanding. Rick's mouth went dry. Well, what exactly are you suggesting? Layla stepped forward, her towel slipping dangerously low. On Aqua 9, it's customary to express gratitude to one's host through physical communion. We would be honored if you would join us in your shower. Rick's mind reeled. This couldn't be happening. It was like something out of a cheesy sci-fi porno. Yet here he was, faced with two stunningly beautiful alien women propositioning him in his own bathroom. That's not... We can't, he stammered, backing away. His heel caught on the bath mat, sending him stumbling backwards. He flailed, grasping for something to steady himself. His hand found Anita's arm. Her skin was cool to the touch, but not unpleasantly so. It felt almost electric, tiny vibrations pulsing beneath the surface. She caught him easily, her strength surprising for her slender frame. Careful, Rick Chambers, she purred, her face inches from his. We wouldn't want you to injure yourself. Perhaps it would be safer if you simply surrendered to the experience? Rick's heart pounded in his chest. Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea. He barely knew these beings. They were from another planet, for crying out loud. Who knew what kind of consequences could arise from interspecies relations? And yet, the way Anita looked at him, her iridescent eyes swirling with colors he'd never seen before. The gentle touch of Layla's hand on his shoulder, tentative but curious. The steam from the shower enveloping them all in a warm, misty cocoon. We shouldn't, Rick whispered, but his resolve was crumbling. Layla's voice was soft in his ear. Why not, Rick Chambers? Is not the pursuit of knowledge and understanding the highest calling? Think of all we could learn from each other. Rick closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opened them, he found himself nodding. Okay, he said, his voice barely audible. Okay, but let's take it slow. This is all new to me. Anita's smile was radiant. Of course, Rick Chambers. We are all explorers here. Shall we begin with the basics of your shower ritual? As if in a trance, Rick allowed himself to be led towards the shower. Anita reached in, adjusting the temperature with surprising dexterity. Layla helped him remove his t-shirt, her cool fingers trailing across his skin. The water is quite warm, Anita observed as they stepped under the spray. Is this typical? On Aqua 9, we prefer cooler temperatures. Rick nodded, trying to focus on the conversation and not on the fact that he was naked in his shower with two alien women. Yeah, hot showers are pretty standard on Earth. Helps relax the muscles. Layla ran her hands over her arms, watching in fascination as rivulets of water cascaded down her blue skin. It does feel invigorating. Oh, Rick Chambers, look! She held out her arm where the water seemed to be forming intricate, swirling patterns before sinking into her skin. That's incredible, Rick breathed, reaching out to touch her arm without thinking. The moment his fingers made contact, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. Layla gasped, her eyes widening. "What was that?" Rick asked, snatching his hand back. Anita moved closer, her body pressing against his side. "It seems our physiologies are more compatible than we anticipated. How fascinating. Tell me, Rick Chambers, do all humans experience such intensity during aquatic interactions?" Rick swallowed hard, acutely aware of every point of contact between their bodies. No, this is definitely not normal, at least not in my experience." Layla's hand found his, intertwining their fingers. Another spark of energy passed between them, less intense this time, but no less thrilling. "Perhaps we are forging new pathways of understanding," she mused. "A bridge between our species." The rational part of Rick's brain knew he should put a stop to this. It was too fast, too strange, too potentially dangerous. But as Anita's lips found his, and Layla's hands began to explore his body, that rational voice grew fainter and fainter. Time seemed to lose all meaning as they explored each other under the warm spray of the shower. Rick marveled at the way Anita and Layla's skin seemed to pulse with inner light, changing colors in response to their arousal. They, in turn, were fascinated by the most mundane aspects of human anatomy, the roughness of his stubble, the curve of his collarbone, the way his pupils dilated in the dim light. It was like nothing Rick had ever experienced before. Every touch, every kiss felt amplified, as if his nerve endings had been rewired. He found himself hyper-aware of every sensation, the slide of wet skin against skin, the mingling of their breath, the soft sighs and gasps that echoed off the tile walls. As they reached the heights of pleasure together, Rick felt as if he was touching the stars themselves. Colors he'd never seen before exploded behind his eyelids. For a moment he could have sworn he felt the vastness of space, the cosmic dance of distant galaxies. When it was over, they stood together under the cooling spray, bodies intertwined, catching their breath. Rick's mind struggled to process what had just happened. He had just had love with aliens, in his shower, and it had been transcendent. Anita was the first to speak, her voice filled with wonder. "Rick Chambers, that was beyond our wildest expectations. Is this typical of human mating rituals?" Rick couldn't help but laugh, the absurdity of the situation finally hitting him. "No, definitely not typical. That was something else entirely." Layla nuzzled against his chest, her skin glowing softly in the dim light. "We have learned so much already, about your physiology, your responses to stimuli, but I sense there is still so much more to discover." As the water began to run cold, Rick reached out to turn off the shower. His hand hesitated on the knob as a thought struck him. "Wait a second. You said earlier that on Aqua 9, water is a precious resource, but you've been in here for hours using up all my hot water." Anita and Layla exchanged a glance, a mixture of guilt and mischief playing across their features. "Ah," Anita said, her voice taking on a teasing lilt. "Perhaps we exaggerated the scarcity of water on our world, a small deception to pique your interest." Rick's jaw dropped. "You lied? About your entire reason for being here?" Layla at least had the decency to look sheepish. "Not entirely. We are genuinely fascinated by Earth and its inhabitants. We simply omitted certain truths to facilitate our research." Rick stepped out of the shower, grabbing a towel and wrapping it around his waist. His mind was reeling. If they had lied about this, what else weren't they telling him? "I think," he said slowly, "that it's time we had a real conversation. No more half-truths or omissions. I want to know exactly why you're here and what you want from me." Anita and Layla looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. Then Anita nodded, her expression growing serious. "You're right, Rick Chambers. You deserve the full truth, but I warn you, The reality of our mission here may be more than you're prepared to handle. As Rick led them back to the living room, a mixture of excitement and trepidation churned in his gut. He had a feeling that whatever came next would change his life forever. For better or worse, remained to be seen. Rick settled into his armchair, his damp hair still dripping onto the collar of the fresh t-shirt he'd hastily donned. Across from him, Anita and Layla perched on the edge of the sofa, their blue skin glowing softly in the dim light of the living room. The air crackled with tension, a mix of post-coital awkwardness and the weight of unspoken truths. "All right," Rick said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let's hear it. The whole truth this time." Anita and Layla exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Anita spoke, her melodic voice tinged with a gravity Rick hadn't heard before. "Our world, Aqua-9, is dying," she began. "Not from lack of water, as we initially led you to believe, but from a genetic degradation that threatens to render our entire species sterile within a few generations." Rick leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "Genetic degradation? How is that possible?" Layla picked up the thread, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Our people have always been few in number, Rick Chambers. We valued quality over quantity, refining our genetics over millennia to create what we believed was the perfect form. But in our hubris, we introduced a fatal flaw into our DNA. We've become too perfect," Anita added, a bitter smile twisting her lips. "Our genetic diversity has narrowed to the point where viable offspring are becoming increasingly rare. Each generation, fewer children are born, and those that do often suffer from debilitating mutations." Rick's mind reeled, struggling to process the implications. "So you came to Earth because your species represents our last hope," Anita said, her gaze locking onto Rick's with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Human DNA is remarkably adaptive, resilient in ways our own has forgotten how to be. We believe that by combining our genetic material with yours, we can create a new hybrid species that carries the best of both worlds." The weight of their words hit Rick like a physical blow. He slumped back in his chair, running a hand through his damp hair. "Jesus," he muttered. "And I'm guessing our little encounter in the shower wasn't just for fun." Layla at least had the decency to look abashed. "It served multiple purposes," she admitted. "Yes, we gathered genetic samples, but the experience was also deeply pleasurable and informative." Rick's cheeks burned at the memory, but he forced himself to focus. "So what now? You've got what you came for. Are you just going to disappear back to your dying world?" Anita shook her head, a spark of excitement lighting her eyes. "No, Rick Chambers. This was merely the beginning. We've chosen you not just as a genetic donor, but as a potential father for the first generation of our new hybrid species." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Rick gripped the arms of his chair, anchoring himself against the vertigo of this revelation. "Father? Me? But why me?" "Your genetic profile is exceptionally compatible with our own," Layla explained, her voice soft but fervent. "And more than that, you've shown a capacity for acceptance and adaptability that is rare among your kind. You didn't run from us or report us to your authorities. You listened, you engaged, you connected." Rick's mind flashed back to their encounter in the shower, the transcendent feeling of touching the cosmos. Had that been real, or just some alien trick to manipulate his emotions? "This is a lot to take in," he said, his voice hoarse. "You're asking me to help create an entirely new species, to potentially father children that would be, what, half human, half alien. Do you have any idea of the ethical implications of something like that?" Anita leaned forward, her eyes pleading. "We understand this is an enormous decision, Rick Chambers. We don't expect an answer immediately, but please, Consider the magnitude of what's at stake. An entire civilization hangs in the balance. Rick stood abruptly, pacing the small confines of his living room. His mind raced with possibilities, with questions, with fears. And what about Earth? If we create these hybrids, where would they live? What would stop your people from just taking over? That is not our intention, Layla assured him, rising to intercept his pacing. She placed a cool hand on his arm, and Rick felt that same electric tingle from before. We seek coexistence, not conquest. The hybrids would be a bridge between our worlds, ambassadors of a new era of interstellar cooperation. Rick snorted, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Right, because humans have such a great track record with accepting those who are different. Have you seen our history? Anita joined them, her presence a calming force in the charged atmosphere. We have studied your history, Rick Chambers. The violence, the prejudice, the fear. But we've also seen the capacity for growth, for acceptance, for love that transcends boundaries. It is that potential we wish to nurture. A heavy silence fell over the room as Rick grappled with the weight of their proposal. Part of him wanted to throw them out, to pretend this night had never happened and return to his normal life of photography and mundane worries. But another part, a part that had always yearned for something more, something extraordinary, whispered of the incredible opportunity before him. "I need time," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't a decision I can make lightly." Anita nodded, relief evident in her posture. "Of course. We understand, Rick Chambers. Perhaps there is a way we can show you more of who we are to help inform your decision." Rick raised an eyebrow, wary but curious. "What did you have in mind?" A mischievous smile played at the corners of Layla's mouth. "Well, you are a photographer, are you not? Perhaps, what did you call it? A photo shoot?" Despite himself, Rick felt a spark of professional interest ignite. The photographer in him couldn't deny the incredible opportunity before him to capture images of beings from another world, to document a moment that could change the course of human history. "All right," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Let me get my equipment." As Rick set up his cameras and lights, Anita and Layla watched with fascination, peppering him with questions about the technology and artistic process. Their genuine curiosity and eagerness to learn was disarming, making it easy for Rick to slip into his familiar role as a photographer directing a shoot. "Okay," he said, adjusting the last light. "Let's start with some simple poses. Anita, why don't you stand by the window? Layla, you can sit on the arm of the sofa." As he began to shoot, Rick found himself slipping into a creative trance. The aliens moved with an otherworldly grace, their blue skin catching the light in ways that defied conventional photography. He experimented with angles and lighting, trying to capture the ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from within them. "Can you tell me more about your world?" Rick asked as he worked, partly out of genuine curiosity and partly to keep them talking, capturing more natural expressions. "What's it like on Aqua 9? Anita's eyes lit up, her posture relaxing as she began to describe her home. "Imagine a world of endless twilight, Rick Chambers. Our binary stars never fully set, casting our planet in a perpetual state of dusk. The sky shimmers with colors your eyes have never seen, auroras dancing across the heavens." As she spoke, Rick captured a series of breathtaking shots, her face animated with love for her homeland. Layla chimed in, her voice wistful. "Our cities are built of living crystal, structures that grow and adapt to our needs. We have no need for vehicles as you know them. We travel through streams of energy, our bodies dissolving and reforming at will." Rick lowered his camera, momentarily forgetting to shoot as he became lost in their descriptions. "It sounds Incredible, he breathed. It is, Anita said, a note of sadness creeping into her voice. Or rather, it was. As our population dwindles, more and more of our great cities stand empty, slowly crumbling back into the earth from which they grew. The mood in the room shifted, the weight of their mission settling back over them like a heavy blanket. Rick raised his camera again, this time capturing the sorrow and determination etched on their faces. "Tell me about your people," he said softly, wanting to understand more about the civilization he was being asked to help save. Layla's expression softened, a small smile playing at her lips. "We are a people of artists and scholars," Rick Chambers. "Every Aquinian is expected to master at least 3 forms of creative expression by the time they reach maturity. Our greatest achievements are not measured in wealth or power, but in the beauty and knowledge we bring into the universe." As she spoke, Rick captured a series of shots that seemed to glow with an inner light, as if Layla's passion for her culture was radiating through her very skin. Anita moved to join Layla on the sofa, their bodies intertwining in a pose that was both alien and deeply intimate. "We value connection above all else," she explained. "The sharing of minds, of experiences, of pleasure. It is through these connections that we believe we can create a better future, not just for our people, but for yours as well." Rick lowered his camera, his mind reeling with the implications of what they were proposing. "And the children, the hybrids," he said, his voice hesitant. "What would they be like?" Anita and Layla exchanged a glance, their eyes shimmering with excitement. "We can only speculate," Layla said, "but we believe they would inherit the best of both worlds. The adaptability and resilience of humans, combined with the heightened sensory perception and mental abilities of Aquinians. They would be bridge builders," Anita added, her voice fervent. "Beings capable of understanding both Earth and Aqua 9, of forging connections between our worlds that could lead to advancements beyond our wildest dreams." As they spoke, Rick found himself capturing shot after shot, his camera seeming to move of its own accord. The passion in their voices, the hope shining in their eyes, it was all there, immortalized in pixels and light. Finally, as the first rays of dawn began to creep through the windows, Rick lowered his camera. He felt drained, emotionally and physically, but also strangely exhilarated. He had just documented something truly extraordinary, perhaps the most important photo shoot of his life. "I think we've got some amazing shots," he said, his voice hoarse from hours of conversation. "Would you like to see?" Anita and Layla nodded eagerly, moving to flank Rick as he pulled up the images on his computer. As they scrolled through the photos, gasps of wonder and delight filled the room. "Rick Chambers," Anita breathed, her eyes wide with amazement. "You have captured us in ways we've never seen ourselves before. These images, they tell our story, our hopes and fears in a way words never could." Layla nodded in agreement, her hand resting lightly on Rick's shoulder. "You have a gift, Rick Chambers, a way of seeing beyond the surface, of capturing the essence of a moment, of a being." Rick felt a warmth spread through his chest at their praise. Despite the enormity of the situation, despite the moral quandaries still swirling in his mind, he couldn't deny the connection he felt to these extraordinary beings. As they reached the end of the photos, Anita turned to Rick, her eyes shimmering with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "Rick," she said, dropping the formal use of his full name, "when can we have our next photo shoot? We want to learn more about Earth's art, and about you." Layla nodded enthusiastically, a shy smile playing at her lips. "And perhaps you could tell us more about Earth's pleasures. There's still so much we don't understand." Rick looked at them, these beautiful, complex beings who had turned his world upside down in the span of a single night. He knew he should be cautious, should take time to really think through the implications of what they were asking. But in that moment, looking at the photos they had created together, feeling the warmth of their presence beside him, he couldn't bring himself to say no. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "I'd like that," he said softly. "I think we have a lot of cultural exchanges ahead of us." The weight of the decision still loomed, the ethical implications still tangled in his mind. But for now, in this moment, Rick allowed himself to simply be a photographer who had captured something truly extraordinary, a man on the cusp of an adventure beyond his wildest dreams. As Anita and Layla began to pepper him with questions about Earth's sunrise, about the changing colors of the sky, Rick felt a surge of affection for these curious, passionate beings. Whatever the future held, he knew that his life had been irrevocably changed by their arrival. And as he began to explain the science behind the sunrise, gesturing to the window and watching their faces light up with wonder, he couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, this change might be for the better. The story of Rick Chambers, reluctant father of a new hybrid species, was just beginning. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across his living room and illuminating the extraordinary beings who had chosen him, Rick found himself eager to see where this cosmic tale would lead. Well, dear listeners, we've reached the end of our cosmic romp through Rick's very eventful night. If you're still with us, congratulations. You've just experienced what I like to call close encounters of the steamy kind. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did I really just listen to a story about a photographer getting it on with blue aliens in his shower? And to that, I say, yes, yes you did. But hey, who among us hasn't fantasized about being the chosen one to save an alien race through the power of, cultural exchange? I hope this tale has expanded your horizons, much like Rick's shower expanded to accommodate three beings from different worlds. Remember, the next time you hear a strange noise in your bathroom, it might not be your pipes. It could be your destiny calling. If you enjoyed this interstellar adventure, feel free to share it with your friends. Just maybe don't tell your grandma, unless she's into that sort of thing. No judgment here. And who knows? Maybe this story will inspire you to look at the stars with new eyes. Just remember, if you do meet any aliens, always practice safe diplomacy. Thank you for joining us on this journey across the cosmos and into the depths of Rick's very confused psyche. May your own showers be eternally alien-free, unless of course that's what you're into. This is your humble narrator signing off. Remember, keep watching the skies, and maybe invest in some extra towels, just in case.